Russia has threatened significant retaliation against Western assets in response to the freezing of Russian funds by Western allies. The stakes are substantial, with Western assets in Russia valued at approximately $194 billion, including $32 billion owned by U.S. companies and $90 billion by European entities. The European Union has implemented its 15th sanctions package against Russia on December 16, 2024, marking a significant escalation in the ongoing economic conflict. The Kremlin has implemented several measures affecting Western businesses, such as a mandatory 50% discount on assets from unfriendly countries sold to Russian buyers, also a 15% exit tax on departing companies, and a special C accounts that restrict profit repatriation. Also, Russia has already taken concrete steps against Western companies, seized over 700 million euros from 3 Western banks, expropriated assets from companies like Carlsberg and Danone, placed Italian firm Ariston and German company BSH Hochstreit under Gazprom's temporary external management. At a minimum, Russia holds approximately $288 billion in Western assets within its territory, though this figure should be interpreted cautiously, as $98.3 billion of the $223 billion attributed to European countries comes from Cyprus, a known tax haven for wealthy Russians. Germany, previously Russia's major trading partner, has only about $17.3 billion in trapped assets. Western companies still have significant exposure in Russia, with EU and US companies maintaining approximately $194 billion in assets there. Of this amount, $32 billion belongs to US companies, while $90 billion is owned by European enterprises. In response to Western sanctions and the G7's decision to use frozen Russian assets to aid Ukraine, Moscow has implemented retaliatory measures. In April 2023, Putin signed a decree allowing his government to temporarily take control of foreign companies' assets in Russia. The Kremlin has also imposed strict conditions on Western companies attempting to exit the market, including a mandatory 50% discount on asset sales and a 15% exit tax. Many Western businesses that initially pledged to leave Russia following the 2022 invasion have found themselves unable to do so due to bureaucratic obstacles and potential losses. The corporate exodus has already cost Western companies more than $107 billion in write-downs and lost revenue. Furthermore, Western businesses still operating in Russia cannot repatriate their profits, as these funds must be held in special C accounts within Russia. Most recently, Moscow has threatened further retaliation if the West proceeds with plans to seize Russian assets. The Russian government has warned of legal consequences and described Western actions as illegal expropriation. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova has indicated that Russia has a wide arsenal of political and economic countermeasures at its disposal, though specific retaliatory actions have not been disclosed. The true extent of Western assets in Russia is likely larger than the officially reported $288 billion, as several factors suggest hidden or underreported holdings. The complex web of offshore structures and tax havens, particularly in Cyprus, which accounts for $98.3 billion of reported European assets, indicates that many assets may be obscured through sophisticated financial arrangements. Corporate structures and joint ventures further complicate the picture, particularly in the energy sector, where Western companies hold significant undisclosed stakes in partnerships with Russian firms like Rosneft, Gazprom, and various oil and gas projects. Many of these arrangements involve complex ownership structures that make it difficult to accurately assess their true value. The situation is further complicated by the fact that some Western companies continue operating in Russia through subsidiaries or alternative arrangements, with their assets potentially being undervalued or hidden through various legal mechanisms. This is evidenced by the fact that over 1,400 international companies are still operating in Russia, many through complex organizational structures. The Russian government's recent actions, including the confidential decree allowing the purchase of Western assets at significant discounts, suggest there may be substantial unreported assets that Moscow seeks to control. Additionally, the presence of trapped multinational subsidiaries and the difficulty in accurately valuing these assets under current market conditions make it challenging to determine the true scope of Western holdings in Russia. The existence of special C accounts and various financial mechanisms used to retain Western corporate profits within Russia also suggests there could be significant undeclared or underreported assets. Furthermore, the complex nature of asset valuations under current sanctions and market conditions means that many Western holdings may be significantly undervalued in official reports. Major Western investments at risk. According to Russian state media, the largest Western investments in Russia include Cyprus, $98 billion, Netherlands, $50 billion, UK, $19 billion, Germany, $17 billion, France, $16 billion, Italy, $13 billion. European companies face greater vulnerability to Russian retaliation due to their larger presence in Russia compared to U.S. businesses. Many Western companies that initially planned to exit Russia following the 2022 invasion now find themselves trapped, facing increasing bureaucratic obstacles and potential asset seizures. Putin has signed a decree enabling significant countermeasures. Authorization for Russian courts to seize compensation from U.S. assets in Russia. Ability to confiscate Western assets if Russian assets are seized abroad. Threat of retaliation against what Russia terms Western thievery. Recent developments have significantly impacted the NSD's role in managing Western assets. In June 2024, both U.S. and U.K. authorities imposed sanctions on the NSD, following the European Union's earlier sanctions from June 2022. This led to a major restructuring of Russia's custody system, particularly for assets held by investors from unfriendly countries. In October 2024, Russia implemented a significant change by removing the NSD from the custody chain for Western-owned shares through Presidential Decree No. 840. This decree established a new parallel custody system where shares in restricted Type C accounts are now transferred directly to local Russian registrars, bypassing the NSD. The actual value of Western assets under Russian control is complicated by several factors. A substantial portion of the reported $288 billion was held in offshore havens like Cyprus and the Netherlands, suggesting the true amount of endangered Western assets might be considerably lower. Furthermore, the NSD's role has evolved from being the sole custodian holding nominee accounts at issuers' registrars to a more limited role under the new system. The recent restructuring of Russia's custody system has created new challenges for Western investors attempting to manage or divest their Russian holdings. Under the new framework, these assets are subject to strict controls, including mandatory approvals from Russian authorities for any transactions. This situation has effectively trapped many Western assets within Russia's financial system, despite the technical removal of the NSD from the custody chain. The European Union has implemented its 15th sanctions package against Russia on December 16, 2024, marking a significant escalation in the ongoing economic conflict. The new measures introduce comprehensive protections for European companies, addressing Russian litigation risks and penalties, while also establishing new derogations for central securities depositories to release specific frozen cash balances. Notably, the EU has extended divestment license deadlines to December 31, 2025, providing companies with additional time to manage their exits. The financial implications of this conflict are substantial, with Russia controlling approximately $288 billion in Western assets through its National Settlement Depository. Conversely, the G7 and its allies have frozen roughly $300 billion in Russian sovereign assets, with European jurisdiction maintaining control over $220 billion of these assets. In response to Western sanctions, Russia has intensified its retaliatory measures against Western businesses. Recent actions include placing German company Bosch and Italian firm Ariston under Gazprom's temporary external management. Russia continues to enforce strict exit conditions for Western companies, requiring a 50% mandatory discount on asset sales, imposing a 15% exit tax, and mandating special government commission approval for any business departures. The December 2024 EU package introduces additional protective measures, including a prohibition on enforcing Russian court rulings that impose unjustified economic sanctions on EU operators. The package also establishes new mechanisms for releasing certain frozen assets held by EU depositories and extends deadlines for European companies to execute orderly market exits. In light of these developments, the EU has issued explicit warnings to operators, advising them to consider winding down their Russian operations due to the escalating risks associated with maintaining business activities in Russia. The EU's 15th sanctions package, adopted on December 16, 2024, introduces comprehensive protective measures that significantly impact European companies operating in Russia. From a legal standpoint, these companies now enjoy stronger safeguards against Russian legal actions, including protection from anti-suit injunctions and unjust court rulings. Companies can now claim compensation in member state courts for losses arising from Russian legal proceedings and recover damages from Russian parties who benefit from asset expropriations. Regarding asset management, the package provides enhanced control mechanisms over frozen assets and exit strategies. Central securities depositories now have new mechanisms to release certain frozen cash balances, while divestment license deadlines have been extended until December 31st, 2025. This extension allows companies to execute more orderly market exits, with special derogations being granted on a case-by-case basis to facilitate smoother withdrawals from Russian operations. The operational safeguards introduced in the package include transaction bans on Russian companies that violate arbitration agreements with EU counterparts. European businesses are now protected against Russian litigation risks and penalties, with specific prohibitions on enforcing Russian court rulings that impose unfair economic sanctions on EU operators. These measures collectively create a more secure framework for European companies to manage their Russian operations while planning their eventual market exit. The EU has made it clear that operators should seriously consider winding down their Russian operations due to the increasing risks associated with maintaining business activities in the country. This comprehensive protection package demonstrates the EU's commitment to supporting its companies in navigating the complex process of disengaging from the Russian market while minimizing potential losses and legal complications. While both sides have targeted each other's assets, the scale and impact differ. The West's freezing of Russian state assets, particularly central bank reserves, represents a substantial economic lever. In contrast, Russia's actions have primarily affected private Western companies operating within its jurisdiction. This asymmetry underscores the West's stronger position in terms of state-level asset freezes, while Russia's measures, though impactful on individual corporations, do not match the scale of Western actions. The situation remains dynamic, with ongoing legal proceedings and policy debates. The upcoming court decision involving RBI, expected on December 25, 2024, could have significant implications for Western businesses in Russia. Additionally, discussions continue within the EU and among its allies regarding the potential use of frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine, balancing legal constraints with geopolitical objectives. The unprecedented use of the US dollar and international banking systems as weapons against Russia has served as a wake-up call for emerging economies and geopolitical blocs like BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These nations, along with others in the global South, are now taking decisive steps to protect themselves from similar vulnerabilities, pushing forward the agenda of economic self-reliance and de-dollarization. BRICS-led efforts to shield economies. One push for a BRICS currency. BRICS nations have been vocal about their desire to create a common currency to reduce dependence on the US dollar. This initiative has gained traction as the risks of dollar-centric systems become more apparent. While still in its early stages, this currency would likely be used for intra-BRICS trade, bypassing the dollar altogether. It is part of a broader strategy to establish financial autonomy. 2. China's leadership in de-dollarization. China, as the economic powerhouse of BRICS, has been leading efforts to diversify away from the dollar. The yuan has seen increased use in global trade, particularly in energy transactions with nations like Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. Through its Belt and Road Initiative (BRI), China is offering financing and trade settlements in yuan, encouraging partner nations to move away from dollar reliance. BRICS nations, led by China and supported by countries like Brazil and India, are taking proactive steps to insulate their economies from the weaponization of the US dollar. These measures are laying the groundwork for a more decentralized financial order, where countries have greater control over their economic destinies. While the transition will take time, the seeds of de-dollarization have been firmly planted, reshaping the global financial system for decades to come.